About 100 mil off the floor.
And is there a reg reason it needs to be that high off the floor?
Is there?
Welcome. Today we're doing a series on battery, inverters and solar over this channel, and today's not the review of the battery system, which is from Livoltek. Today is about installers putting these systems in, what it's like, how difficult, simple. Lee is fresh out of MCS training, fresh out of training from some other manufacturers which are very similar to this battery. This Livoltek battery follows pretty much the same procedures, so I thought Lee is the best knowledgeable person at the moment to install it. He's also a good friend. He's done a couple of EV charge installs for friends of mine. If you're looking for an EV install, solar install, then check out Morzak EV. We're going to crack on with this install and see what we can discover. So what's the first problem you got there, Lee?
What do you mean?
You wouldn't think Lee's got a YouTube channel, would you? What's the first problem you discovered, Lee, when you...
Sorry. So when you put this flush on the wall, because your bricks are, your stone, real stone, is completely, is quite uneven, I think the battery is going to fail on this.
Okay, so what's your solution for that then?
So we're going to have to... We'll put it on the wall flush, mark the hole positions, make sure it's straight and everything, and then when we come to put the bolts in, we'll just have to shim it out a little bit.
Okay, does that mean you're going to have to shim the top ones out as well then?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to have the battery sitting off the floor, so the brackets, it should be about 100 mil off the floor.
And is there a reg reason it needs to be that high off the floor?
Is there?
It's in the instructions, 50 mil clearance.
Oh, is that? Yeah.
Right, let's try that again.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what we can use for shims.
Washers?
Might need a lot.
So Lee, you've ended up putting it on the wall, but you didn't use any spacers. Why was this?
So these expansion bolts, they've got a hard stop, so we can get the bolt so with the brackets the correct distance off the wall. So when we tighten it up, then it expands out and locks the bolt in position with adequate space. Okay,
so that's basically fixed the issue that we're going to have.
Yes, yeah. And we just need to copy the same thing above then, so they're standing out at the same distance.
Are we going to put the battery on this now then?
Yeah, I think we should do, yeah, so we can make sure we've got the spacing right for the next part.
And also that it's spaced off the wall correctly for this.
Yes.
Lee, are you a real electrician? Because you own a brush.
I bought it especially for today.
Oh, did you? It'd really impress me if you got a Hoover out.
I've got a Mickey to Hoover.
Yeah, we've got one. Make it look heavy.
God, this is heavier than Gary.
Right. I think that's it, yeah.
I'm in. Are you in?
I'm in. Sure. That's another thing as well. Do you prescribe to this?
Do you fit isolators or not?
Yeah.
So I'm going to. Yeah. So I always put in my head, what would I do if I actually had a proper job? If you want to isolate the strings, you've got an isolator on there, which ones, if it's maybe the right IEC numbers compliant, you would knock that off and physically disconnect the plugs if you wanted isolation.
Yeah.
So, and fit.
Now, I know, literally all the software, when you spec a system, if it's got a DC isolator, it doesn't spec a system. And I was told on the training, you've got to have one still. Now, I hadn't got one, and I still passed the MCS accreditation.
So Lee, we've put the battery on and the inverter on first. Why have we put these on the wall before putting anything else in?
Getting the battery on the wall so we can set the height. Then build up the bracket system, which fits together nicely, gets all your spacing. Then we put the inverter on. That allows us to make all the connections safely between the battery and the inverter before it's energized. Establish all the connections, make sure we're happy with everything while it's completely dead, and then we can start working our way back to the consumer unit so that we can get it to a point where it can be energized and tested.
Okay, so on this we've got a BMS cable, which is basically a Cat5 cable. We've got two cables going from the inverter to the battery. Now obviously I've not got solar on here. Now we've got two strings for solar. Why is there two?
So you get two strings for solar, which is two MPPTs. So these are used to, so a good example would be, say your house, if you had solar on the front, solar on the back, you would be generating different amounts of power at different times. So by having two MPPTs, it can track those separately, so it can optimize the string to be generating each string to be generating the most at any time.
Okay, so you don't need like the little bits that you put between some panels. I can't remember what they're called now.
The optimizers.
So you don't need optimizers.
No, you don't need optimizers in that sort of situation because you can split it between. It's almost like having two separate inverters, except the load, the total power is split between the two strings.
Okay, so what's next now? We've got it on the wall.
We've established all the connections. Is install the cabling. Just look at the installation method. Install the cabling back to the consumer unit. And the same with the data cabling for the CT clamps.
Lee just said to me off camera, the best goldmine line ever. And we're talking about the app on these inverters, batteries, but also EV chargers in general, because we've done Lee's done a series as well on EV charge reviews, as well as mine. And you said a golden nugget, Lee. What was that golden nugget?
So we were talking about the apps and the portals, and I said, don't you think that a lot of companies underestimate the importance of having an app which functions well and looks good and is just a good user interface
and integrates with adaptive tariffs, adaptive charging, solar, and some of them do the functions but are a bit ugly.
Yeah.
Any companies you want to name out loud? I tell you what, why don't we name one that works very well? Omi.
Yes, yeah.
Fantastic.
Absolutely,
Integration with a car.
Yeah.
My Energy's design protocol on it, very, very good. Usability, I'd question a little bit.
It's cumbersome in places, it's a little bit slow in places, but it does look good.
Design-wise, it's the best.
Yeah.
It's one of the best designs.
Yeah.
And Indra have just got, the Indra's app used to be awful. I can say that. Indra app was awful. It was one of the worst apps ever. Their new app, however, is actually really good.
Yep.
Have you seen it yet?
I haven't, no.
Okay, I've got a demo on my phone, I'll show Lee in a bit, but the new Indra app is fantastic. There's some other companies that are also still lacking.
Yes, yeah.
We'll have a look when we power this inverter up how good that app is. So me and Lee have just been talking about some YouTubers who make videos in our industry and other industries that just cram in adverts and sponsorship deals that aren't relevant, which is why precisely we'll be talking about this Valora multimeter, which is obviously topical, and they've obviously sent it me to review, and we will be using this, won't we, Lee?
Yes.
Yeah. So really decent device, does quite a lot. Very cheap. I'd probably only use it in a college situation, maybe not if you're an electrical engineer like Lee. But talking about cramming in sponsors, Octopus Energy, not a sponsor of mine, but you can use my Octopus referral link down below to split £100 with me. They do energy darius for EVs, which would definitely be good for charging up battery systems like this. Again, this is a topical plug of a topical referral and an affiliate link, Lee.
And if Nick has loads of referrals already, so if you want to use my referral code instead, check out my video and I'll stick the referral link in the video and in the description.
And it's my edit, so I'll be editing that out. Cheers, Lee. So this connection here, Lee, what is this? The grid connection?
This is the grid connection, yeah. So
is this grid going in?
So this is grid going into the inverter, yes.
Into the inverter, and there's a separate one coming out of the inverter.
Yes, for the EPS side.
So the EPS side will have another one, but feeding the grid is just one connection in.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, and if you had a power cut, it will only power the EPS side.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Okay.
So it disconnects the grid side to prevent anybody getting a shock who's working on the lines.
Okay, and if we, in this situation, we're not wiring up the EPS, but if we're wiring up the EPS, would you have a separate consumer unit for the EPS side?
Yes, so I'd have a separate consumer unit. I need to check the regulations of what you need in that consumer unit in terms of RCD protection, and it would need its own TT earth as well.
TT, so you don't wire up to the grid in case you had a complete shock. So basically island the EPS side
That's
is its
right,
own
yeah.
circuit. Those EPS circuits just run 24/7 no matter what, even without power cuts.
Yes, yeah. So they you can operate within the same loading to, I think on this one it's 5 kilowatts.
Something, yeah, I think, yeah.
And yeah, you can. They'll work all the time, but obviously in a power cut situation, those would continue working uninterrupted.
Okay, and this Livoltek one, this actually also works in UPS mode. So UPS mode, basically uninterrupted power system. So in the terms of blackout, I think you get something like a couple of milliseconds where the power goes off, switches to UPS mode. But what's nice about this is the solar strings will carry on charging up the battery in UPS mode. Now, most EPSs don't allow that. If we have a power cut, it'll just drain the battery, and your solar is effectively a pretty decoration. So this will actually carry on charging it. Not every system does that, but quite a few on the system coming on the market, which we'll probably look at, and a few that you do it.
Yeah, and it's becoming a popular option, especially with threats of blackouts, rolling blackouts due to power shortages. So. Yeah.
Now here's a question for you, Lee. This grid side that you've put in, if I had a power cut and I was a naughty boy, and I took the cover off this, and I pulled that out and put it into the EPS side, would it still work?
Technically, yes. Yes.
Okay. But that as if I was a naughty boy.
Yes, and yeah, you could cause all sorts of potential havoc.
Especially for people working on the grid, because the genuine reason for a power cut might be they are working on the electricity lines. They've turned the power off so they can work on them.
Yep.
And if you then plug this into the battery, you could actually harm those people who are working on the lines.
That's right, because the output is still 240 volts.
Yeah.
And 5 kilowatts, which could easily kill somebody.
Yeah. So if you are going to be a naughty boy, bear in mind that you would be liable and being sued. And if you were going to be a naughty boy, I would turn the main breaker off at your board, and which certainly I'd never do if I had a power cut. You've just mentioned that we couldn't actually move this to the EPS. Why?
So they've actually got two different plugs, so two different physical fittings, so you can't swap.
So they've already thought that Nick might come along, take this cover off, be a little bit naughty. So Livoltek, possibly pretty much every other manufacturer have pre-thought that some people might be a bit naughty. So if you did want to do it properly, you could fit a changeover switch.
Manual changeover switch or automatic changeover switch. That would technically again be possible, but not recommended.
Right.
In any way.
Yeah. So you wouldn't get an electrician like you to fit a changeover switch.
No,
you just wouldn't do it.
I wouldn't do it.
Okay, so off camera, I'm going to hand Lee some. No, Lee, but I mean, it's possible. Is it possible to do it legally? Is there a way of doing it so you could run the whole house electric, or is it really always going to be on a separate EPS switch?
Without any kind of gateway, or if you wanted to run the whole house off it, and Livoltek acknowledged it was okay, you could potentially wire this into a manual changeover switch that would at the same time automatically disconnect from the grid and connect to the house.
Right.
that is legal and would work. What you need to make sure is that you're not pulling more than the inverter can give.
Right.
So you haven't got a shower on, a
Yeah.
cooker and things like that. We have a Cat 5 cable fed from the inverter.
Okay.
And we're going to install a meter which will measure the supply, grid supply, and feed that information back to the inverter so it knows how much is being imported or exported if you had solar.
Okay, so I presume we're ripping this out.
Yep.
The CTs that go to the house and go to the garage are going to go in a separate box over here.
That's right, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
and that's going to have the meter in that talks to the battery inverter over there.
That's right, and it's going to be a separate weatherproof consumer unit.
And they're all, pretty much all the batteries are very similar in this kind of design, with CT clamps talking back to the battery with a Cat 5 cable.
Yeah, some of them have hardwired CTs which are on a single string, but if you want to go over a longer length of cable like this one over a longer distance, then they have a meter which is a dim rail mounted meter.
Okay, alright, and enclosure, we're doing it outside this DNO box, we're going to do a waterproof enclosure, I presume.
That's right, yeah, IP rated.
Right, let's get cracking.
So what are you hoping to get out of having a battery?
I'm hoping that I'll be able to do more DFS events, like the DFS event that's going to start at 5 o'clock, which hopefully we'll have the battery done by then. And then also the fact that I can charge up more off peak.
Yeah.
And use the off peak power. So I only use 10 kilowatts a day. Do you think you're going to see more customer installs which are battery only this year, Lee?
I think potentially. I think that one of the things that's driving the big solar sort of battery and solar at the moment is the VAT incentives.
Yeah, because you're only paying 5%. Is it 5% VAT? On
No,
solar?
0%
VAT on solar.
at the moment. Yeah, and on a battery install if it's coupled with solar. So that's obviously increase. A lot of people who might just consider battery might are probably thinking
20% off your battery now.
Exactly, yeah. So why have just a battery? We may as well just invest in the solar as well. How long that'll stay around, I don't really know. Or the government might decide to incentivise battery installs as well, because it has just as much potential to help the grid.
Yeah.
So, I think there's a definite portion of people as well who've got solar panels installed on the feed-in tariff years ago, and they're sort of realising that they're not making the most of those solar installs. So having a battery will optimise their system. Yeah.
Just very quickly, Lee, what you've got in there now, you're basically putting in this is the Cat 5, and it's going to essentially a mini smart meter / sleaze T clamp.
That's right. Yeah. So
that functions as a CT clamp and a meter.
Yeah. So it measures the current. I assume current coming through either the live and neutral side or both, and then transmits this data via these little terminals here through this Cat 5. So I'm just checking the polarity of the incoming plug. So I've disconnected the incoming plug from the inverter, turned on the supply. I'm checking the polarity, and then I'm going to do a ZS just to check that you've got adequate earth in. So in the event of a fault, somebody cuts through the cable or there's a electrical fault, it will trip the devices downstream in line with the regulations.
So Lee, we've got it finished. It's 6 o'clock. Inverter's in, batteries in, covers are on, plastics are off.
Yes.
It's done some internal checks. You've ran your test equipment on this, checked all that out.
Yep.
What did you think of this? I mean, obviously you've been reading the instructions on this, which is, most installers don't do, but it is the first time you've installed the Livoltek version.
Yeah.
How does it compare to other battery systems you've installed?
So firstly, there's a lot of systems don't have this kind of bracket system where you can get your spacing right, so that was really nice. I like the way the covers fit together. That's all really neat. Even with the difficult wall, the difficult surface we're mounting it on, I thought that would be more of a problem, but it worked out okay in the end. It wasn't too difficult. So yeah, it's I think with after do obviously when you do an install for the first time, it always takes a bit longer. Doing the filming today as well, we've done some other bits and pieces. Yeah, slowed us down, but I think for a first time install, it was quite an ergonomic for me as an installer.
So they thought about how the brackets put together, made it quite easy for you.
Yeah.
You did make a couple of small, tiny comments about things that you would have Livoltek change on it. So one of them was that you thought the battery terminal cables were a bit short.
Yeah, definitely. Just to give a bit more relief on those, I didn't like the way it felt, a bit strained, and I had to bend them to get them in. I don't like the bolts that come with it, the raw bolts. I find are difficult on certain wall surfaces like breeze blocks. So I would definitely. I always carry spare raw bolts anyway of different brands, just so that I can adapt the install to suit my needs.
Yeah, but the ones on for this wall work perfectly.
Yeah, they were actually better on this install in particular.
Well, if you've enjoyed seeing the install video, the Livoltek video, then make sure you check out this other video about the actual Livoltek review.